Okay, next we're going to look at installing Microsoft SQL Server Standard Edition. And this is actually what I'm going to walk through during the installation. But as you can see, we have very detailed steps on how this is done and what you have to do. Alright, so that's the option that we're going to run through. You also have the ability to install in Azure. I mentioned that earlier. And we do have detailed instructions on that as well. I'm not going to do that today, but as you can see here, this is how you would do it. Alright, so quite a few steps and what's involved. Alright, and then once I'm done installing SQL Server Standard Edition, then we're going to actually go through the installation of configuring 360 to connect to that SQL instance. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with installing SQL Server Standard Edition. Okay, I already have my SQL media stored on my virtual machine here. So what I'm going to do is go in, and because this is an ISO, I need to mount it. And then once I mount it, then you want to right-click Setup and Run as Administrator. Now let's go back to the Help Guide. All right, so what we want to do is select Installation and then New Standalone Installation. So Installation, Standalone. Now here you can opt to use an evaluation or put in your own SQL key, which I've done, and then Next. Then you want to accept the EULA, and then Next. Now here is where it's going to give you options to install SQL Updates. I'm going to skip this due to the fact it could take some time. However, in a production environment, you want to make sure these are installed and fully patched. Alright, everything is passed except for the Windows Firewall. It's giving us a warning. Typically this is okay. However, in some networks, IT might be blocking some ports via group policy. If that's the case, you want to go back to our deployment guide, look for the SQL ports, and add those exceptions. But I think we're good here. So I'm going to click Next. And then we're going to go back to the Help Guide here. And now these are the three things that we have to enable: Database Engine Services, Client Tools, and then Client Backward Compatibility. Alright, so Database Engine, Client Tools, and Backward Compatibility. Now here's where you can adjust the paths if you like. I'm going to leave everything as defaults for now, and then Next. Alright, so the next step is, creating the database instance name. It's recommended to use Veriato 360. However, you can use whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the defaults and use Veriato 360. If you hit Tab, it should change the instance name for you. And then Next. Alright, so let's see what the next step is here. Alright, SQL Service Accounts. So you want to make sure everything is checking out: manual, automatic, the browser service, and so forth. And they do. And then we're going to click Collation. Alright, and you want to make sure everything is in Latin, as you see here. And mine is by default. And then Next. Here's where we're going to create the mixed mode account name and password. So I'm going to go ahead and create that now. If you click on Add Current User, whatever user you're logged in, and hopefully it's an admin, it will automatically populate it. If not, you can click Add here. And there's my account. Alright, next step, data directories. Now I'm going to leave everything again in defaults, but you can change this to a different drive if you want for performance. Then we want to go to temp DB. Alright, number of files, we want to change that to 1. And when you do that, everything else should change automatically. So we're going to change it from 8 to 1, and then tab. And everything else is changed. Log file directory, again, you can point that to a different drive if you like for performance. And that's it. Now we're going to press next to install. Okay, SQL is installed. If you want to look at your summary log, you can click here. I'm going to just close for now. And that completes the installation of full SQL Standard Edition. Now that SQL is installed, we're going to go ahead and install Veriato 360 to that instance. But if you remember, I had mentioned about the Antivirus Exclusions. Now, I have not added those yet. So what I'm going to do is go back to the help guide. And then we're going to go to Antivirus. Exclude the server. So those are the server-side exclusions, and then you have the client-side here. Now these are the major components that we're going to exclude. And if you scroll down, you can see that there are quite a few. So in each one of these folders, you have the subfiles below it. All right, so there are quite a few. Now this is Server 2016 and Windows Defender is built in. Have no other AV installed. What I'm going to do is utilize a Powershell command that you can get from tech support, which will add those exclusions and disable Defender during the installation. Alright, so what I want to do is go here to search and type in Power. You want to right click Powershell, run as administrator. And then I'm going to go back here to my server files, and I already have the exclusion list here. Alright, so we have the ability to add and remove our exclusions. And there is a master file, so all the files that I just scrolled through within the deployment guide are right here too. Alright, so the PowerShell command is going to actually execute this. So all I have to do is add, run as PowerShell. And now the exclusions are added. So now we want to double check to make sure those are there. I'm going to go to Defender Settings. Real-time protection is now off. And if I go to Exclusions, there are all the files. Again, you can get this from tech support. We have it both for the server side and client side. This only works for Windows Defender. Now that we have the antivirus taken care of, let's go ahead and start the installation of Veriato 360. So I'm going to go to my setup file. I'm going to right click and run as administrator. Now this is telling me that there's a pending reboot. Now what that could be is Windows updates that might have downloaded in the background. I'm going to go ahead and skip it for now. So I'm going to click yes. Now we're presented with the splash screen. I'm going to click next. Of course, you're going to want to read through the EULA and make sure you're okay with that. If you are, click accept and then next. If you forget to add the exclusions, it reminds you once more. Next. Now we're not going to do a quick install. That would actually install SQL Express. What we're going to do is install with options. We're going to use an existing SQL server because we've already installed it. There's where you can change the port. We're going to use 443 for this, and we're going to leave everything else as defaults. Now if you wanted to point these to different drives, you can do that right now. Alright, the Veriato data folder, that's where the screen snapshots and email attachments are located. So if you wanted to point this to a SAN or a NAS, it has to be a UNC path that it can get to. And then we're going to click Next. Then it's going to give you the SQL instance name I created earlier, the account, and now I have to put the password in. Alright, optional is where you can change the SQL TCP port. I'm going to use the defaults. Next. Here's where you're going to create the master login account. Now you can use an email address, but for mine I'm going to actually create a login account. Then you have the option of how you want to relay your alerts and email reports. You can use the Veriato email server. It is secure. We cannot read anything if you don't have your own mail server. If you do, then you can opt to use your own SMTP relaying. But I'm going to use the defaults to use Veriato's. And then next. Now, depending on the speed of your machine, this could take anywhere from a couple minutes to a half an hour to even almost an hour. And that's most of the time taken by the database. So just be patient with it. Even though it doesn't look like it's progressing, it is. Now that Veriato 360 has been installed, let's go ahead and check the firewall port again and verify that 443 for our product is in here. So I'm going to go back to the inbound rules, and there it is right there, port 443. So we should be good to go to log in. So go ahead and put in your password that you used during the installation. Now here's where you're going to put in your product key. It might be an NFR key, it might be the customer's product key. Once you put it in here, and you can actually copy and paste into the first box and it will populate the rest of them for you instead of having to type it. And then click Activate Now. Now if the machine is in a closed network, meaning there is no internet access, then what you're going to want to do is check the box for Use Alternative Activation. What this does is it creates an HTML file, and once you take that HTML file over to a machine that does have internet access, it will allow you to download a text file. You bring the text file back over to the server, and then this button will change to Browse. Once that happens, then you can go ahead and activate.